It's over 9,000!
Welcome, Super Elite Warriors, to Final Forum, a podcast for the discussion of all things Dragon Ball. I am your host, Jelli, an elite recruiting member of the Frieza Force, on a mission to find the best warriors from across the galaxy to join the greatest army of all time, and I am joined, as always, by my new recruit co-host.
This is the Bekinney.
And we're on our bearing to Kepler 452b.
I don't understand how you can possibly know the name of a planet in unnamed space.
I'm just making up words here. Why you gotta put me on the spot like that?
Okay, sure. Whatever. I also don't understand why we're heading to a planet that is 5 times the mass of our baseline and twice the diameter. In planetary terms, that seems huge.
Well, first of all, because it's relatively close.
And what else?
What?
You said first of all. What's reason 2 or 3 or more?
Oh, no. No other reasons. Well, as you have no smart alecky comeback, I think we'll get right into it this week. We've got the ship on autopilot, we're in the screening room, and we're going to do another audio commentary. And this week, we are going to cover movie number 3, Dragon Ball, movie number 3, a.k.a. Dragon Ball Mystical Adventure, a.k.a. I don't even want to say the Japanese version, but it's Dragon Boru Makafushigi Daiboken, which really pretty much literally translates to mystical adventure. It's Dragon Ball Mysterious Adventure. So mystical, probably a pretty good translation on that. This movie, we'll get into it and we'll sync everyone up. So there are, again, we'll talk more about some of them, I think, in our notes, in our commentary, but there are multiple versions of this movie. If you have the Slim Pack DVD release that came out that was all 4 of the first 4 Dragon Ball movies, I think we are synced up to the same place there. If you have the one that came out, so due to rights issues, at one point, the first movie was kind of like by itself, and then movies 2, 3, and 4 were packaged together. If you have that box set, which is movies 2, 3, and 4 packaged together, and we talked about this in our Sleeping Princess in Devil's Castle commentary, and how on that release, like, that's kind of the version you want to own, because the newer versions of that have had their frame rate like messed with. But if you have that pack, when you push play on the movie, it immediately starts the movie. Like, boop, it go.
Oh, right on.
If you have the newer version, the I think it's like 2010 version of this movie, or you're watching it on a not Crackle, hopefully, because that's got commercials and you'll get thrown off very quickly. But if you're watching it on like Funimation or Crunchyroll and somewhere where you don't have commercials and you're streaming this, you will have a Toei logo first. We are paused at the 13-second mark after that Toei logo has faded. So if you've got the non-Toei logo version, you're going to just pause the instant you like press play. As soon as it brings up the black screen that lets you know it's playing the movie, just press pause like immediately, 0 seconds. Everyone else 13 seconds. That should sync us up. I also think if you have that older DVD, you're going to want to make sure you're watching it in Japanese to be fully synced up with us, because there's this weird thing. I noticed it when I watched the English version. This is just letting me get everyone else synced up. 13 seconds, people. I noticed it when I was watching the English version. It does the intro, and then it has like a title skip to like a different layer on the DVD, where it does the opening credits in English, and then it does a layer skip back to the movie. I don't really know why.
I wanted to make sure everyone got credit.
I have no idea why it does that, but it's like the movie zips back and forth between two different layers, and there's little chunks of pause. But so once everyone is synced up to that 13-second mark, grab your controller, grab your remote, hover your hand over the space bar on your computer. I will not dignify people who watch movies on their phones with any sort of instruction.
As you should.
And I'll do 3, 2, 1, go. On go, we will press play and we'll get into it. Everything sound good?
Yes, sir.
3, 2, 1, go. Okay. Dragon Ball Mystical Adventure. It starts with this basically telling us what the Dragon Balls are, which movie 2 didn't do at all. Movie 2 barely even mentioned that the Dragon Balls existed. But this movie was originally released in Japan on July 9th, 1988, which would be right before Goku begins his ultimately triumphant final battle with King Piccolo. It debuted at the Toei Manga Matsuri Film Festival that year, where it was shown as part of a quadruple feature, along with Bikkuraman 2, Secret of the Muon Zone, Tatakae Ramenman, and Kamen Rider Black, Terrifying, the Phantom House of Devil Pass. It is directed by Kazuhisa Takenouchi and Minoru Okazaki. I'm butchering those, I'm sure, who had both been directing and storyboarding various episodes up to this point. It's written by Yoshifumi Yuki, who had previously done some story and concept work for the prior 2 movies, and the music is by Shunsuke Kikuchi. It earned about 1.2 billion yen between box office and rental distribution deals, or around $11 million, and again, contextualizing these as we did in our Sleeping Princess and Devil's Castle commentary, 11 million, actually not bad at all for what is an ad for your show. As usual, briefly just talk about the other films on the bill, because that gives us an opportunity to talk about these things a little bit. Bikkuraman 2 is the second, obviously, Bikkuraman film. And what is Bikkuraman? Well, I'm check notes again at this point, because this doesn't seem right. It's a line of cookie-like wafer snacks.
Okay.
That, due to collectible stickers being packaged with the wafers, became massively popular. If only for the stickers. People would actually buy these for the stickers and throw the snacks in the garbage.
What?
And they wound up spinning off from these stickers into a 75-episode anime series that ran for 2 years, during which 2 films were made. And over the course of the decades since, a total of 308 anime episodes across like 4 or 5 different series have been produced. And there is currently a series running as of right now. This would be like spawning a multimedia empire off of Bazooka Joe. I don't know if there's any American equivalent to this. We see toys and toys popularity spawn TV and TV used to sell toys, but rarely do we see it happen because of like a candy tie-in. You know, shows used to sell food to kids, like sugary breakfast cereals.
Yeah.
But not shows that would spawn because of those sugary breakfast cereals. It's not like there's a whole Tricks TV show.
Could you imagine like a cinematic universe of like all of the cereal mascots? I got to be honest. I think I'd probably watch that.
I probably would too. And I'm just going to briefly go back to the movie for a second here, because this movie is blisteringly paced. We are covering essentially the last movie, if you remember, covered Goku and Krillin essentially like auditioning to be trained by Master Roshi. That's what that movie covered, was like those couple of episodes where, remember, it was like maybe even one episode where they bring him girls and then they go and get lunch. It was like an episode and a half, and that was it. That's what that movie covered. This movie now covers everything from the end of that through Tien Shinhan in its own way. And you'll see as, you're watching this movie, it's very, very different. But we've already gotten through their training, and they are now getting ready to go to the tournament. They're testing their skills after having been trained, and it's 4 minutes into the movie. The Ramenman movie, the Tatakae Ramenman, it's a spin-off of Kinnikuman, which we mentioned in a prior commentary track, which is basically just an Ultraman parody featuring over-the-top heroes fighting in a wrestling tournament to gain control of a planet. Ramenman is as briefly as humanly possible, kind of like the Vegeta of the Kinnikuman franchise. He starts as this ruthless warrior. He actually kills someone during the wrestling tournament to gain ground, and he winds up becoming a mentor and ally after being beaten by Kinnikuman. So that sounds a lot like Vegeta to me.
Just a bit.
He becomes popular enough of a character to launch a spin-off, and thus received a movie at this Matsuri festival. And then finally, there's Kamen Rider Black. And we've talked a little bit about what Kamen Rider is in the past, which is namely a series where the hero transforms like Power Rangers to defeat bad guys every week. The Kamen Rider Black is one of the more well-regarded entries in the entire Kamen Rider franchise. It received a sequel, Kamen Rider Black RX, or I'm sure there's probably some crazy Japanese way that they say that, because I remember in the past I once talked about Kamen Rider ZO, and it's supposed to be like Kamen Rider ZO, so who knows what RX is supposed to be. And ultimately, this series received a remake as well, Kamen Rider Black Sun, which is, as of this recording, available on Amazon Prime, and I cannot recommend strongly enough.
I have also seen this. It is amazing. Go watch it.
We could do a whole episode about this, and if I can find any sort of tenuous connections to Dragon Ball, we probably will.
I hope we can find that connection then.
Because this show, Kamen Rider Black Sun, goes so hard. If it went any harder, it would impact the gray matter of your brain as it tore through your eyeballs.
Accurate. Okay, so quick recap. What is the Toei Manga Matsuri Film Festival? So quick refresher. This is a Toei Cartoon Festival that was established in 1969 as a way to showcase popular anime series as theatrical films during breaks in the Japanese school year. So spring, summer, and winter vacation. Yes, that's right. They have 3 in the Japanese school year. They're set up differently than us. I don't know what else to tell you. It's a 2-week to 1-month event where a double or triple or quadruple bill would play, lasting around 3 hours. It was a way for kids to get into a given show that they might have missed up to that point for whatever reason. Every Dragon Ball movie up until 2013 premiered at one of these festivals, and the Matsuri were a way for these companies to get more eyes on their products. And these movies were treated more as advertisements than actual theatrical films, and Toei's festival runs to this day, but now only once per year in April rather than 3 times per year. Again, remembering that these are basically ads sort of masquerading as movies, their box office takes were modest but not bad, generally bringing in quite a bit more than what the ad revenue on a TV episode would be, with the minimal incremental cost of overproducing a TV episode itself. So we broke down the festivals themselves more in our Curse of the Blood Rubies commentary and the financials a bit more in the Sleeping Princess and Devil's Castle commentary. So if those topics interest you, we recommend that you go back and give those a watch and a listen.
Yep, absolutely. And
there it is. The tongue to the temple. I was waiting for that.
Yeah, General we're now 8 minutes into the movie and General Blue is dead already. Like
you might want to watch this without the commentary first, just so you can keep up with everything that happens, honestly.
So yeah, we did go into that, and it's just, to this day, you'll still see and hear people talk about all these movies like, oh, I wonder what it was like seeing this in theaters in Japan, and whatever. And you're like, this wasn't like a real movie, people. You wouldn't treat it the same way you would treat a real movie. It was like less than a Fathom event.
Yeah, it's like I almost want to say it's like a not like a fan film, but sort of similar in that, like it's just kind of like a reimagining kind of.
And it's like they do those things over the summer for movie theaters here. They do those kids camps where they'll show like,
oh yeah, that's a good point.
They'll show like Ghibli movies, or just like a Pixar movie or a DreamWorks movie that's like targeted towards kids. They'll do that over the summer. And like, no one is ever like, oh, I wonder what it was like seeing Ferdinand the Bull for the first time. No, I'm like, no.
So temper your expectations is what we're saying.
Yes. On the writing and producing side, we are in the hands of Yoshifumi Yuki, who we mentioned on The Curse of the Blood Rubies, and we don't know a ton about, aside from he had some Dragon Ball credits, and Chiaki Imada, who we discussed as sort of a founding father of Toei and the Toei Manga Matsuri Festival. For more on Imada, check out, again, The Sleeping Princess and Devil's Castle commentary. This movie is Kazuhisa Takenouchi's film directorial debut for Dragon Ball, though, as I mentioned, he already directed a bunch of episodes of the show to this point, around 30, on his way to ultimately directing a total of 40. Takenouchi began his career directing the Dr. Slump movie, Dr. Slump and Arale Ho-Yo-Yo, The City of Dreams Mechopolis. That's a title. From there, he went to work on Dragon Ball. He would also wind up working on Sailor Moon, one of the One Piece films, The Cursed Holy Sword, 3x3 Eyes, and directing a bunch of Daft Punk music videos, ultimately being the principal director on Interstellar 555, The Story of the Secret Star System, where all of the S's are actually fives, because why not? Which was a companion piece to the Daft Punk album Destiny. I'm not like a huge Daft Punk
great album
first person, so
nice little Easter egg for the album. It was a nice little self-contained story. I think if you look, if I remember correctly, I believe the movie itself was diced up to be used for music videos for a bunch of songs on that album, if I remember correctly. I could be wrong. Correct me, folks, if I am wrong, but I think that's the way it went.
I think that's like what. So he, Takenouchi must have directed this movie, and then they were like, "Oh, let's use this as music videos."
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm trying to say here. If I did it clumsily.
For someone who's worked on such relatively high-profile things, Dragon Ball, Sailor Moon, One Piece, Daft Punk, we couldn't find anything out about this man, his life, his career, his vision, his mentality, his approach to filmmaking, directing, anything. Just a list of credits to his name. Here's where we get something more interesting, though. Maybe you be the judge. We've not mentioned the name Minaru Okazaki in our previous commentaries, and again, I apologize for butchering the pronunciations and the accenting of these names. This is plainly and simply a lapse on our part, though, as we do more and more research into these movies and dig more and more over time and look in further and further corners of information in order to find talking points about these cut and paste the staff movies. We uncovered new information. Okazaki actually worked on Sleeping Princess and Devil's Castle as a co-director and storyboard artist as well, so our mistake for not previously mentioning him. He was born September 27th, 1942 in the city of Osaka, originally hoping to begin a quote-unquote prestigious career in live-action film. He moved from Osaka to Tokyo in his early 20s and started working as a staff member with various studios on various films. I couldn't find anything out about this early work, but he was probably just like a PA, like a production assistant, doing odd jobs here and there. There's millions of those on every movie. He probably got someone their coffee. In 1964, Okazaki reconnects with a friend from junior high, Fusuhiro Nagaki, working under the pen name Bonjin Nagaki. Nagaki was an animator who had worked on Doraemon, or has in her career worked on Doraemon, Obake no Kyutaro, and a whole bunch of others over a 50-plus year career that began with her working as a mangaka in the 1950s. She joined Toei Animation in 1961. Nagaki is 5 years Okazaki's senior, so how exactly they're like friends is a little bit unknown, but in 64, she reaches out to Okazaki along with Takeo Kozai, who's an animator who worked on a bunch of titles, including Doraemon and A Journey to the West adaptation, Kenzo Koizumi, and Hiroshi Agatsuma, to establish the anime studio Hatena Productions. Hatena was a studio that outsourced productions for other anime houses, such as Mushi Productions, P Productions, and of course, Toei. So they basically just became like an outsourcing animation house. Okazaki makes his debut in the world of animation as a storyboard artist and director for the original Astro Boy anime from Mushi Productions, and went on to also work on Doraemon, as well as Dr. Slump and Dragon Ball. He's credited as the chief director for the Dr. Slump anime, and would go on to work on Dragon Ball Z, Dragon Ball GT, we'll forgive him, and the Dr. Slump remake as well. Working again with Takeo Kozai, Okazaki also grabs notable animators Minoru Maeda, who we've discussed as a Dragon Ball creative, and might have like a little section on him at some point in an episode in the future. Tetsuo Imazawa, an animator who worked on Dragon Ball, Gegege no Kitaro, and Digimon. I love Gegege no Kitaro, by the way. Mm-hmm. I got exposed to it just this year. It's awesome. And Akinori Nagaoka of Dr. Slump and Dragon Ball, and Kenichiro Suzuki to form Studio Junioro. Another studio I can't find anything out about. But we can assume was another outsourcing place for more major studios. Then in 1998, Okazaki and Minoru Maeda, together with Hiroshi Agatsuma, their previous kind of collaborator, found Synergy SP, an animation studio that seems, for lack of a better word, more legitimate than these people founded in the past. Synergy SP has previously worked with Shueisha via Shogakukan Shueisha Productions, the arm of the Shogakukan company that produced Pokemon and Hamtaro. They also produce various Beyblade anime series and find themselves currently owned by Shin-Ai Animation, who created the Doraemon animated series. So Okazaki has pretty strong ties to Doraemon, it seems. Unfortunately, this is another case where I can't find any other interviews or insights into this man's personality, but his credits and his risk-taking ventures, his willingness to, found studios and things like that, speak to themselves for a certain extent. He's a risk-taker who's fairly self-motivated. He remains active today in some aspect, I don't exactly know which, and he's even at the age of 81.
For just as a quick little thing here, we are now at the Major Metallitron fight in the storyline at 17 minutes. Just keeping up with our blistering pace here.
Yep, and Major Metallitron's dead.
And there we go. And now he's done at 17 minutes and 15 seconds. As with basically everything early Dragon Ball, the music is composed by Shinsuke Kikuchi. We'll keep kicking that can down the road for now, but let's just take a moment here to note that this is the debut of Kikuchi's 8th suite of musical packages for this franchise. These cues then had their anime premiere in the episode Changes, which is the 11th episode of the Piccolo Jr. saga. The insert song from the anime, Dragon Ball Densetsu, serves as the ending theme to the movie. On the subject of audio, we have wildness with the dubs once again. Harmony Gold created a dub of the film that was broadcast with Curse of the Blood Rubies as a double feature in and around the Philadelphia area, and a few other select test markets. This airing was not widely noticed, and either Harmony Gold never released the movie on home video or did, and that wound up flying under the radars, and nobody ever took notice of it. The dub changes the names of the characters, as we've mentioned in the past, with Goku becoming Zero, Bulma as Lena, Oolong as Mao Mao, which further kind of pushes the communist pig angle, in my opinion. And Krillin being called Bongo, Roshi's called Haymaker, and Quarren is called Whiskers the Wonder Cat, which is just absolutely insane. The Harmony Gold version also replaced the film's opening with the second opening sequence used for the anime, with the alteration of the katakana being removed from the Dragon Balls under the title, and the Japanese credits removed and replaced with Harmony Gold credits. They also changed the dialogue of the opening and changed the ending to show a still picture of Goku flying away from Shenron, who is called Dragon God in that dub, playing over the intro theme instead of the outro theme. There's just a whole bunch of craziness going on there. The rest of the script is apparently more faithful to the Japanese script than future dubs, actually, though, and all the Kikuchi music is kept intact. When Funimation did their initial dub in 2000, they replaced the opening and ending sequences with those of the TV series, but later on quietly reissued the movie with the original theatrically shown opening and ending reinserted. Up until 2011, the credits were in English, but when Funimation reissued the film on DVD with the other 3 Dragon Ball films, these credits were replaced with the Japanese credits. In 2005, Toonami UK aired a dub from the French company AB Group, though there are no known copies of that one in circulation currently. A Malaysian company known as Speedy Video Distributors, which seems totally legit, released another dub of the film. We've very briefly mentioned Speedy on a prior commentary, and since we have no new characters to examine this time around, let's talk a little bit more about them now. Maybe just a little, though. We should do a full-on dubs episode at some point, maybe. Yeah, anyway. Speedy released VCDs, or video CDs, in case you weren't familiar, and DVDs, which I hope you're familiar with those, of all kinds of properties, probably of questionable legality, after beginning as a dub house working on Dragon Ball. They released dubs of all the DBZ movies as well as the second and third Dragon Ball movies. And when it comes to this movie specifically, popular theory is that they did not obtain a legitimate copy of the film to dub. And so they simply muted the audio and placed Kikuchi music wherever they felt it was appropriate. They also added sound effects from the Hanna-Barbera library of sound effects and changed character names all over the place. Goku's called Monkey Boy, Roshi's called Tortoise Master, Chaozu is called Dumpling. And these are some of the more acceptably close renamings. To get some really wild ones going here, Yamcha is renamed as Uncle Happy, Oolong is called Silly King, Major Metallitron is called Captain Big, and Bulma is called John. Oh, and the Nyoibo, or Power Pole, is called the Wonder Rod, which I'm not going to get into the implications there.
I have to get my Wonder Rod out.
Yeah. There's issues there, definitely. The infamous Speedy dub is considered one of the lowest quality dubs of all time, with a limited pool of voice actors all voicing multiple characters poorly, with improper grammar, poor audio quality, and then these bizarre name changes, and then there's poor compression due to it being adapted for VCD format. So you can easily look up clips on YouTube, and we do suggest it because they are hilariously bad.
And this is where my tenuous Godzilla connection for the episode comes in.
Gotta get it in.
On the topic of the Speedy dub, I've seen some clips. It's insane. It's insanely bad. Just how insanely? It reminds me of the absolute worst movie I've ever seen in my entire life, period, point blank, bar none.
What is that movie, by the way?
Throughout the late 90s, a fan filmmaker named Omar Saya made a bunch of short Godzilla films under various titles featuring various homemade Godzilla suits, which I will say, the suits themselves, for being homemade by a guy who had absolutely no idea what he was doing, are not bad. And various Godzilla enemy kaiju as well. For whatever reason, and bless his heart, Omar never stopped thinking of these as very important and very good films. And he wound up very recently, 2 years ago, finding a distributor who was willing to put them on home video on Blu-ray, as long as he wouldn't get sued by Toho for copyright infringement. So Omar sets about the task of redubbing the shorts, editing them together, and creating a single narrative film. Though I use the words narrative and film in the absolute loosest possible manner, as the resultant experience, dubbed Dragon Lizard Lord Super Monsters, is plainly and simply a fever dream. It makes little to no sense, to such an extent that in the director's commentary, yes, this nightmare of fan films being sold under a legally distinct name in order to avoid lawsuit has a director's commentary on Blu-ray, while we can't even figure out where some of the Dragon Ball directors were born. But anyways, on his commentary, Omar Saya admits at various points he doesn't know what's happening or even supposed to be happening on the screen.
Fantastic.
And it's an absolute insane experience. It is an almost even more insane commentary where he talks about how he was arrested for filming without permits, and he showed the films to a judge who then said, "Oh no, these are too important to be kept from humanity." Which,
you know what? God bless, that ego is something else.
Which, who knows? But it's also genuine. It's great. He also mentions that he once had a friend pull a gun on him over a discussion of the movie Beowulf for suggesting that the dragon should have won. And he ends this insane commentary track by saying, "I am Gamera." And then the commentary track just ends with like a minute and a half left in the movie still. The speedy dub that I have seen clips of reminds me of Omar's redubbing of these movies, where it's sometimes barely audible. All the voices and tones are completely inappropriate for the moment. It's as if it was dubbed live at the moment, and like they didn't remember what had happened 30 seconds ago, while the dubbers were simultaneously learning the English language. And seriously, even though this movie is short, we don't have a whole lot to talk about, so I'm going to keep talking about Speedy. Lending credence to the theory that this was a less than reputable company operating on the fringes of legality is that they released movies for which they did not do the dubs. Perhaps movies that they legitimately licensed at one point in time? Specifically, the first Dragon Ball movie and the first Dragon Ball Z movie, The Dead Zone. Their releases include the movies and sometimes an occasional random episode of the show showing that they were just throwing things onto discs to try and get people to buy stuff. They wound up releasing about 30 episodes of Dragon Ball Z dubbed, a handful of Dragon Ball dubbed, and all of the original Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z movies. In their dub, they take a great many liberties, making some of the following changes. And we've talked about some of them, but still. Goku is called Sangoku, except when he's not, and it's called Gohan, or Ungkong, or Monkey Boy, depending on the movie at random. Bulma is John, or Lena. Frieza was called Frieza, or Freela, just at random. Like, it'd be in the same thing. They'd be like, Frieza, oh, Freela, how you like the same sentence. Goten is known as Paco, Goku, or Puten. Roshi is called Roshi, oh hey, or Grandpa, or Master Moten, or Mr. Poi. Yajirobe is sometimes called Yajiroki. Broly is called Bollocks. Janemba is Big Head. Shenron is Shendron. King Kai is Mr. Kaio or Gay King. Chi-Chi is Cheeky. Kai or Ki is redubbed your Seiya Spirit or Saya Spirit. Krillin is sometimes called Infinite Hands or Big Brother. Piccolo is sometimes called Uncle Motong or Digimoto, which comes actually from transliterating his Chinese name, which is DZ Motong. Trunks is known as Durangaso from his Cantonese name. Bojack is King Bogo. Cell is called Shallow, which actually weirdly works really well.
I can see that.
And Videl is called Kami, because yeah, sure, why not?
Not Super Kami Guru?
And keep in mind, none of these names are ever applied consistently. They sometimes switch between movies, sometimes within a movie, and often they're like mildly based in their Cantonese translations, but sometimes come from the Mandarin translation. Other times they're from the English translation, sometimes the original Japanese. It's just a complete crapshoot. And since it's an English language dub, it's difficult to understand the rationale behind any of these changes. Like, why would you base it off of Japanese randomly? Or unless you were basing them all off of Japanese. Why would you base it off of Cantonese randomly? Unless they were all Cantonese. You know, it's who the hell knows?
They didn't care. That's what it boils down to. They didn't care.
And then lending even further credence to all these sus theories floating around is the dub of BoJack Unbound. either this was somehow the first one Speedy did, or by this point they got really lazy, or for some other third reason, the dub is very clearly done over top of another dub. You can hear the background music track fade in and out as dialogue becomes prevalent, and it becomes clear that they were just fading the mix of the original track down during dialogue, doing their dub, and then fading it back up in between dialogue moments. During super dialogue heavy sequences, there's just random orchestral music in the background to avoid obvious silences, but then it also doesn't fit at all with what Kikuchi's music is like. And then occasionally, scenes in all of the movies just remain in Japanese dialogue and not dubbed.
Fantastic.
And then jumping back to the movie, we've already had a bunch of tournament. Tao Pai Pai has blasted Goku into the sky. This is how Goku gets on top of Korin Tower.
Just died like 2 minutes ago.
This is how Goku gets on top of Korin Tower, by the way. He doesn't climb it. It's not like he gets blasted up there.
Honestly, that's even better than the original, in my opinion. So while this dub is closer to what we're used to, we still have some holdovers, like, and I hope I'm saying this right, and it's not Japanese, so I feel really inadequate now.
We're talking about the Funimation dub here,
yeah,
the actual English dub. Is
it Sally Delegadio?
I think. I don't know.
I hope that's correct. Man, if I am wrong, please let me know. I apologize. But she's from Sleeping Princess and Devil's Castle on the Funimation dub. And they sound a bit different to those used to Stephanie Nadolny, who I guess is like is she the typical one that does like Goku in Dragon Ball?
Goku, yeah.
Okay. So Delgadillo hails from Arlington, Texas, and she worked for Funimation from 1997 to 2001. She's the first person to voice Kid Goku and even voiced the earliest appearances of Dende in Dragon Ball Z. Over the years, her portrayal of Dende has been re-recorded by Laura Bailey, God bless her. But her work as Goku in the two movies has been retained. Sally left Funimation in 2002 and presumably uses her master's degree in drama in some capacity in New York City, where she currently resides. Another person about whom very little is known. If we want to scrape around here, the only thing approaching a new character at all is the Mifon Empire itself, which isn't a character. Obviously, technically, we actually don't even have too much to say about it, really. But it's one of the few things that's like completely new. So it's the setting for the tournament of the film, and it's obviously based on the setting for the prior tournaments in the anime.
Gotta interrupt because we got the column moment again.
Ah, yes, the one of the great moments right here.
And we do it again.
Off to the sunset. I love it. Let me just backtrack here for just a second. So it's the setting for the tournament of the film, and it's obviously based on the setting for the prior tournaments in the anime, which is to say Bali, where Toriyama took a trip that visually inspired a lot of the design of the tournament space. However, the clothing worn by most people are of the type worn by Imperial Chinese commanders. So we've got some cross-cultural like pollination going on here, especially with the various Hindi-looking deities on statues and such in the background. Mifon is very obviously a fictional place inspired by a swath of East Asian culture, meant to be kind of a nowhere or random place in China, and fits sort of into the wuxia elements of Dragon Ball.
Yeah, and in the dub track, I watched this dubbed prior to this just to get some feel for the dub versus the subs. Mm-hmm. They never once say Mifon Empire in that dub track. And there's a lot of difference between the dub and the correct subtitles, even with regards at times to characters speaking or not speaking. And I say correct subtitles because I'll note that if you have the older DVD release, which is the one that I have, the subtitles on it are dub titles. So they are just subtitling what the dub says, which is really weird when you're watching it in Japanese and no one's speaking and there's text on the screen.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's the English dub includes like their voices being heard even when no one is speaking. It's like you see shots of other characters. So you have like a stare down early in the movie between Pilaf and Pai Pai, and it's just them like kind of staring at each other a little bit, but it has Pilaf speaking while showing Pai Pai's face, and then vice versa. That's the dub. And then at times in the English version, characters will speak over another character's Japanese version dialogue. So there's like when Roshi is telling the boys, you know, hey, let's go to the tournament or whatever. There's like weird dialogue exchange between them versus who's actually speaking in the Japanese version. They're like talking over each other in weird ways. It's kind of wild
Also,
how.
Real quick, I just want to jump in here. Arale just showed up.
Yep.
So we're at that point now. We're kind of going a little bit all over the place.
Yes. And like I said, the subtitles on the DVD I have are sadly dub titles because, you know, we live in a world where you need to buy a different box set of everything ever released in order to cobble together a competent collection. Like, this DVD set that I have has the best version of movie 2, but the next box set has the best version of movie 3, and I'm sure probably something coming up will have the best version of 1 because that's how things go. Welcome to the world of being a fan of a foreign-owned property. Like, that's just how it goes.
It's our gift and our curse.
That's I've talked about that before with being a Godzilla fan too. Like, there'll be some collection that comes out that has the best version of this movie because it has the dub or better subtitles or something, and then the next one comes out, it has better picture quality, but they screwed up the subtitles in some way, or they removed the dub because Toho is paranoid and thinks that like some person who did a dub 100 years ago who's dead will come back and their family will be like, I want royalties on this movie, and they'll have to A, that would never happen, and B, what royalties? You'd have to pay 53 cents to this person if you ever lost. So
I've noticed that there, when it comes to media, there are, and not even just media. There's quite a few Japanese countries that are very litigious when it comes to their properties being used in foreign markets. Like the top one that pops in my head is Nintendo. Is constantly copyright striking people that have footage of like Nintendo games up on YouTube, or uses any of their media, even though it's like fair use stuff, they still copyright strike it because from their perspective, like, you know, they don't care about copyright laws in this country. They want their things to be used a very particular way.
Yes. And like certain companies, Toho's most notorious for it, very much has the attitude of like, I don't care how things work in your country. Here's how and I don't even care how things work at other companies within this country. Here's how we do things here, period.
Yeah.
And it gets like, it's understandable to a certain extent when you could have an entire podcast episode about this situation where it's a very confusing and difficult to understand thing, but when Tsuburaya Productions was trying to license out Ultraman, they started talking to this company, Chayo Productions, who I believe is based in Thailand, and legitimately there was like, I guess the legend is that there's a napkin that was signed by Eiji Tsuburaya that gave Chayo the international distribution rights to Ultraman, and Chayo has like never been able to produce this napkin because it probably doesn't exist. But they like for, I don't know, 60 years bogarted the Ultraman international distribution rights, and the only way like to buy something from Ultraman in the US, quote unquote, legitimately was through this Chayo company, which was not legitimate at all. They were like essentially stealing Ultraman from Tsuburaya. So
wow.
So from that extent, it's a little bit understandable how litigious Toho is. And then you also have the other piece of this, and there's so much more to that Chayo thing. Like I said, there have been entire podcast episodes about that on other podcasts. The other thing on top of that is the way the state of the video market in Japan and the US. And this is one of those things because it's people in the UK actually have pretty good versions of Dragon Ball to a certain extent on home video. And the reason why we don't in the US is it's insane. The US and Japan operate in the same region coding. And the Japanese video market is such that rental is still very much alive over there.
Oh,
and
I didn't know that.
And B, purchasing movies is super expensive. The exact same movie that you'll get here for $15 on Blu-ray will be like $65 in Japan.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
And so what they don't want, what like Toho, Toei, all of these companies don't want, and this is just it's a corporate greed thing. They don't want to give, let's say, Funimation, who owns the rights here, or who else has like Toho has been working a lot with the Criterion Collection lately.
Pie.
Yep, Toho's been working with Criterion a lot lately. Sometimes these companies work with like Shout Factory. They don't want to give them a lot of leeway to produce their own like extras, behind the scenes stuff, do interviews, do a lot of cleanups, do a lot of restoration work, all that kind of stuff on these movies, and make a very, very good release, because a Japanese person could then reverse import the American version for far cheaper than they can get it
at a
for
higher quality
in Japan, and at a higher quality. Yeah.
Oh no.
So they put all these caps and restrictions on what studios can do, and they're like, here's what you have to release it, and the company will be like, yeah, but this is like cropped wrong, and they'll be like, you're not allowed to touch it. Or they'll be like, but the subtitle script on this is insane. Can we just commission a new subtitle script? And they'll be like, no, this is the official subtitles. And you're like, yeah, but these were very clearly written by a person who English is not their first language.
Yeah.
So it's just crazy. Like those are the kind of the two biggest reasons. Is one, the Japanese film industry has been hit by some of this crazy international scamming, essentially. Mm-hmm. And then two is just, it's flat out. It's corporate greed. It's, if the US and Japan were in different Blu-ray regions, we probably wouldn't have this issue as much.
Yeah.
As we're winding down, the movie's almost over. But
yeah, so blistering pace on this thing. My God. Like
but we could talk very briefly about this that I've seen pop up. So I've seen this in a few different places. There's a lot of chatter or discussion or whatever about these three movies running a continuity, actually, unto themselves. Okay. Not just an alternate continuity, but like they work as a story. Meaning they might not be in the timeline of the show, but they work to themselves. You can watch the first one, the second one, the third one, and it introduces all the characters and everything properly, and that's a story unto themselves.
Okay, I could see that.
I was just, do you think anything of that? Do you think that works? Do you think that doesn't work?
Well, I mean, so we know the context that these movies were actually created in and how the production companies that made them view them. So I think from that perspective, we know that that's probably not intended. Does it work? Is it lore that the community has created to sort of make it work, like they have for a lot of things in this property? Yeah. And so kind of like as a community thing, I think it's fine. I think it's valid. It doesn't detract from anything. It doesn't ruin anything. So I guess at the end of the day, my view on that would be I'm just kind of neutral to it. Because it doesn't really hurt my interpretation, and it doesn't really matter if somebody believes that or not.
Yeah, I kind of agree. I think
It's
like
like,
it
okay.
works and it works and it doesn't. I don't know. It's such a tough.
Yeah, because and this movie is a great example. There's just so much going on in this. It's like, well, okay, yeah, I mean, it's a story, but like it's very clear that this was pulled from something else. And I feel like that kind of puts a damper on that theory just a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, especially just with like some of the like this one especially I think almost falls into that the most with we recognize a bunch of these characters from having watched the anime, Major Metallitron, General Blue, Tien Shinhan, and even Master Chen. Those are the ones that I think I'll single out kind of the most, as we recognize them from seeing them in the anime. In the context of this story, they don't like, especially General Blue. Like he doesn't
just come out of nowhere. Yeah,
he comes out of nowhere. He doesn't really do anything. Him being like killed by the dude sticking his tongue in his ear.
That's more like just a direct nod to the anime than anything else, honestly.
Yeah, and in the anime and in the manga, the reason it works is because General Blue has been able to beat up Goku a little bit, and now here's this guy killing him without any hands.
Killing him with his tongue.
this guy's for real. But in this one, General Blue just shows up and like punches a bear dude or something, and then gets killed. And it's like, well, that doesn't mean anything to anyone.
He's a jobber for a jobber.
Yeah, so it just, some of that kind of stuff puts a like you said, like a damper on that. It almost makes the movie work a little bit less in that regard.
I almost wonder with like all the multiverse stuff that is popping up in pop culture nowadays, if maybe it's kind of like a little reverse osmosis.
Yeah, like people want there to be a thing where people almost want there to be a thing where like the continuity of these movies crosses over with the actual continuity, and also with, I guess, like I think Super Dragon Ball Superheroes or whatever that show is called. Super Dragon Ball Heroes or something. People want like all three of those continuities, like they did with they did it with the Turtles, didn't they? They had,
they've had a couple like crossover episodes in their series.
TMNT
like
Forever or something.
Yeah, like where like a bunch of different versions got together and did stuff.
Yeah, and the movie's over by the way.
Yeah. All right, that's it. See you next week, folks.
That was 85 episodes of anime in a 45-minute
45
movie.
minutes. Not even, because like the last few minutes is just credits.
Yeah. The last few minutes, though, is credits, but it's also like this.
There is stuff going on. They're basically making wishes to Shenron and bringing like Bora back and all that stuff.
Yeah. This movie economizes its storytelling time, I think, really well in that respect. You get the training is done during the opening credits. The wish to Shenron is done during the ending credits.
Sure. My feeling on this is that it feels like they were given a list of specific events that need to occur within the movie. And then they just, instead of pulling everything from the anime because that would take too long to do, I think they studied like where these things happen in the anime, and then they kind of like rejiggered some stuff and swapped places of a few things to make it a much more compact storyline, and then just wrote out like whatever came to their mind as a way to like tie all of these plot points together.
Yeah, I agree with that. You can feel it. Like you said, you can feel them being like, you have to include this and this and this and this and this.
Yeah, and the General Blue thing is like, I think, a perfect example of that.
Yeah, it just it does it to an extent. There's parts of this that feel checklisty, and there's also like, my biggest complaint in general is there is so much happening and so much crammed in here. It's kind of like, okay, we've watched 3 movies so far, right?
Yep.
What's the story of the first one? Okay, the story of the first one is Goku is a little boy who's a hermit, and he comes across Bulma, and they get kind of swept up in this adventure together where they're looking for the Dragon Balls. Meanwhile, there's a king in a distant land who is also looking for them to help him break this curse that has kind of turned him into a monster. And they're going to butt heads eventually. That's more or less the story of the first movie.
Sure.
What's the story of the second movie? Goku now meets up with his kind of rival, Krillin, and they both want to be trained under the masterful Turtle Hermit, and the Turtle Hermit tells them if you can bring him back the sleeping princess from Devil's Castle, he will train them, and they go to Devil's Castle to find the princess and find that there are monsters there that want to cover the world in darkness, and they have to stop them. That's the story.
Mm-hmm.
What's the story of this one? A lot.
Where do I begin?
You know, what's the story of this one? Well, they train, and then they go to a tournament, but then there's also a bad guy who is trying to take over the empire, and there's also the emperor is looking for his wife, who turns out to be a doll, which okay.
Again, we're not going to touch that with a 10-foot pole.
And his closest advisor, which is Tien, is working against him, but then decides not to work against him at the last second. But oh wait, also these guys who are training, one of them gets blasted up on top of a building.
I feel like if anybody wanted to actually ask me what the plot of this movie was, I'd be like, just watch Dragon Ball.
and then
it would be easier.
And then a girl shows up to help him beat the like. There's no like singular like through line plot on this.
Oh yeah, I hadn't even considered that. Like, if you're not familiar with Dr. Slump, you're not gonna have any clue what is going on with the Arale stuff. I had not considered that. For me, this sits as something that, like, if you've already seen the show, you should totally watch this because it's a fun watch. It's first of all, it's animated really well. It's got the same vein as was it the end of the episode right before the Goku Tien fight in the tournament really kicks off?
Yeah.
When the art style like kicks it up like 10 notches and looks really good. It's kind of a similar vein to that, especially for the action sequences in this movie. So if you like some of those crisper action sequences, I feel like this is a great watch just for that alone, in my opinion.
I'll say revisiting these movies has probably set me up to, I'm thinking, be wildly disappointed when we get to the Dragon Ball Z movies. I would have almost dismissed all of these movies out of hand because for me, this is the second time I've ever seen the Dragon Ball movies. I probably saw them, I'm going to say, nearing on 20 years ago. Mm-hmm. And I did it as a binge watch of all of Dragon Ball type of thing, right?
Gotcha.
And watching them at the time, I was like, "Oh, this is just like what the anime does, except like way quicker and a lot worse." And that is a crass way to look at it because it's not completely untrue because you don't get the character nuances in 40 minutes of 86 episodes.
True.
And so I just kind of dismissed these movies out of hand as like, well, why would I watch any of these movies when I have the show to watch?
Mm-hmm.
These days, it's almost a little bit more like, hey, I want a quick bite of Dragon Ball, not Dragon Ball Z. Let me throw on one of those movies because they are like the good filler episodes.
Yeah, I could absolutely see throwing that on if you're like, oh man, I'm really feeling some Dragon Ball, but I don't want to sit through like every episode of Dragon Ball.
Exactly. I have a mixture of emotions about the fact that we're about to head into the DBZ movies, because part of me is really looking forward to it because I've really enjoyed this revisit, and part of me is like, I know there's some bad ones in there.
True.
Are they gonna look even worse now that I've revisited these and like these more than I remembered?
I'm similarly worried, but I also know that there are some absolutely gorgeous fight scenes coming up as well. So that really kind of helps. That helps me assuage those fears.
Yeah. So what do we give Dragon Ball Mystical Adventure out of 7 Dragon Balls?
I'd give it a 4, maybe a 5, depending on a good day. It's there. It doesn't have anything in it, I think, that sticks out as like, oh, you have to absolutely see this. If you like some of the higher points in the earlier parts of the story, but you don't really want to sit through all of the ridiculousness that is Dragon Ball. I feel like this is a great condensed way to hit some of the higher emotional points and sort of relive it without having to watch the show. And overall, yeah, it ends up being like a very high quality, long running sort of like recap episode with a fun spin, a narrative spin on it, just to sort of freshen it up, if you will.
I agree, and that's why I'm actually going to go higher, because it's really well animated. It is a very fun recap episode. And like I said, when you're in the mood for like a quick hit of Dragon Ball, it's like, let me put on this or the Baba filler episodes with like, Shikacho, that we also had really good animation in those episodes too.
Yeah, it was fun.
And those like more self-contained things. So I'm not gonna go and say it's a 7, but I think this is solidly a 5 out of 7. I would equate that to like a 3.5 out of 5 stars. It's like a solid, fun watch. It's not a great one. It's not a 4. It's not a 6 Dragon Balls. It's not a 5 at all.
Yeah.
But it's like solidly fun. And I think personally, almost like I think we were the most down on Dragon, because this is now, we're done with all the Dragon Ball movies, kind of. Yeah. The original Dragon Ball movies. There's a 4th one, but we're going to talk about it when we get to it chronologically. It comes after Z. I think I would rank the movies, for me personally, I really liked that second one. Movie number 1 at the bottom, that one was fine. Then this one, it's fun and it's solid. And then 2. I would rank 2 as actually my favorite of these 3.
For me, this one, I think...
But this one is beautiful to look at, I will say.
Yeah, and see, that's what makes it tough for me between this one and number 2. Because I'm initially tempted to rank it the same as you, but I think like if you caught me on an odd day, I might rank this one above 2. Like they're pretty close rating in my opinion.
They are. Them. I'd rank 2 and 3 around the same somewhere, and then 1 is very clearly like a step down from them.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Hey, we're approaching Calpe 42B.
Kepler 452B.
Does it matter? Didn't you just admit you're making this up?
But you got to maintain consistency, otherwise it's all just nothing. And since these commentaries tend to run a little on the long side, we'll take our leave of you here. How many new planets will we need to explore? Will we ultimately find the Earth? Find out next time and help us achieve our final forum.
Final Form is written and produced by Tom Gwelly. It is performed by Dan Kinney and Tom Gwelly. Our webmaster is Dan Kinney. Our theme music is provided by YouTube content creator GVG Kid. Want to learn more about the Dragon Ball universe, including concept art, behind-the-scenes interviews, and recommendations from Jelli and Bekinney? Connect with us on social media. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter at Final Forum Pod. Make sure to subscribe, rate, and review wherever you receive your podcasts. And of course, make sure to share it with your friends and family and help us spread the word of the glory of Lord Frieza. The Frieza Force thanks you for your listenership.